Hello, hi everybody. Thank you so much for logging in. I'm wrapped up all in my cord. Sorry, people. Hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's so great to see people's names popping in. We have a great presentation to share with you all today. We're looking forward to getting started. Thank you all for joining. I know it's such a beautiful, beautiful night out, so we really appreciate your attendance. I am going to get started just to respect all of our time. And so let's do it. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to How Food Can Nourish the Brain and Improve Our Well-Being. Brought to you by Cook County North Suburban at NAMI, Alexia Bauer, the founder, and Robert Dannenberg, the creator of Vagel. Vagel's mission is to promote healthy living through education. Vagel will guide you through the jungle of information that is the health and wellness world. I am Bree Hoekstra, the Program Director at NAMI Cook County North Suburban. NAMI, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, providing public awareness, no-cost support, and education programs online and in person so that people and families affected by mental health conditions can build better lives. We are a lifeline to individuals and families who do not know what to expect in their difficult life journey. We offer classes and support groups, and we do a lot of local advocacies for mental health. Our programs are completely free of charge and open to those in our community service areas, but we don't turn anyone away who is in need. We are so pleased to have you all here tonight. This year, each month, professionals in a variety of fields will dig deep into specific topics that will help support your mental well-being and provide further education to raise awareness to fight to end the stigma that surrounds mental health. For our topic tonight, Alexia and Robert will further educate us on the fundamentals of healthy eating and its profound impact on overall well-being, specifically to gain a better understanding of macro and micronutrients and how their critical role in total health can be managed, how poor eating habits can make mental health symptoms worse, and will guide you through actionable, effective, and economic steps to promote a healthy well-being. According to an article published by McLean Hospital, there is growing evidence that diet and mental illness are closely linked. Improving your nutrition can directly affect your mental health symptoms and improve overall mental wellness. And according to the American Psychiatric Association, research continues to grow our understanding of the relationship between nutrition and the mind. And current evidence supports that diet has a role in psychological health. This presentation will clearly explain the fundamentals of healthy eating and how nutrition affects our well-being. Alexia and Robert will discuss current research on this topic and give practical advice on how to integrate this information into a lifestyle. Additionally, they will highlight the role movement and digital stimuli play in nutrient absorption, emphasizing a holistic approach to promote an equanimous, joyful life. Our Q&A will be held at the end of our presentation. However, if you would like to type your questions in the chat box or the Q&A box, please do. We have two guest speakers tonight, Alexia Bauer, the founder and presenter of Vagel, and Robert Dannenberg, the creator and presenter of Vagel. For advertising roles at Ogilvy, Guatemala, and Siglo 21 newspaper, Alexia shifted her focus to yoga upon moving to Chicago in 2007. With 15 years of experience, she has taught corporate, group, and private classes, emphasizing physical and mental well-being through postures, breathing techniques, and meditation. Holding Yoga Alliance's YWCEP and ERYT 500 certifications, she co-directs the Ashtanga program at Yoga View Chicago, leads her own teacher training program, and serves as an advisory board member at Salt and Light Coalition, prioritizing and instilling discipline to foster more fulfilling lives. Robert Dannenberg, with over 10 years in health and wellness, holds certifications as a health coach, strength coach, and nutrition counselor. He's helped diverse clients from corporate executives to athletes with various needs. Former boxer and IKFF athlete, his certifications include functional nutrition, sports nutrition, health coach, somatic therapy, strength coach, weightlifting performance, and certified yoga teacher. We are so thrilled to have them here tonight to further educate us on this ever important topic. So I am honored to welcome our guest speakers tonight, Alexia Bauer and Robert Dannenberg.
Thank you, Bree.
You are welcome.
Thank you, Bree, very much. And thank you to Naomi for having us. Alexia and I are very honored to be here. And we're very excited to share some information with you this evening regarding mental health and nutrition, particularly how our food can nourish our well-being. So this is going to be sort of like a 101 introduction to nutrition and its connection to our mental health. But we'll unpack some of the more specific things as we go. But we're going to start just kind of generally speaking with ideas of nutrition and gut and how it's connected to our central nervous system at large and the brain. So please, if anything's not clear, take note of it. And in the Q&A, certainly I invite you to ask some questions. And I look forward to unpacking things as much as you would like them to be unpacked. So for the next slide, please, we'll see the introduction here, the title of our talk, How Food Can Nourish the Brain and Improve Our Well-Being. And as Bree mentioned in the introduction, this is absolutely scientifically being borne out. The research continues to pile up on how, in fact, our nutrition affects and effects the way our CNS runs and operates. CNS being our central nervous system. So what we eat really does matter. That old school sort of saying, well, you are what you eat, absolutely is true in some effect. And I'll explain that more as we go. But the takeaway that we ask you to take away from this talk is to understand and believe, in fact, that your food can really, truly nourish your emotional state and your intelligence state, etc. You know, your overall well-being. Next slide, please. So food can nourish the brain because a state of our body and brain significantly influences the state of our central nervous system, including the brain, as well as functions of the autonomic nervous system. So food can nourish the brain because our gut, in where the food is metabolized, directly affects, to say, influences our brain, which in turn influences the rest of our central nervous system. And now part of that central nervous system are things that we can control and things that we can't control, which are the autonomic functions. Autonomic being like automatic, things like our breath, our heart rates. All of those things are, generally speaking, really not under our control. They can come under our control consciously, but it would require some deliberate or intensive exercise. That being said, what we put in our body, what we metabolize, is going to affect and influence the way that our CNS is governing some of the autonomic functions. And so it's very, very important that we're giving ourselves or feeding ourselves with the correct, to say, ideal nutrient-rich foods, so that our body isn't working against itself. Next slide, please. So the reason this is so important is because the gut-brain axis is a major communication route within the body. The gut-brain axis is a network of nerves stemming from the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the centerpiece of the relationship between the gut and the brain. So this gut-brain axis is a very legitimate thing. It used to be thought that nothing could get through what was called the blood-brain barrier. And while we still refer to this demarcation in the brain, in the cranium, as a blood-brain barrier, it's very permeable. So what this means is that different molecules and different metabolites and different particles, literally, can enter into the ecosystem that the brain is housed in. And so the gut-brain axis is a major communication route within the body, because a lot of the information coming from the gut up into the brain is constantly being introduced to the body via the food that we eat. Now, this gut-brain axis is a network of nerves but it all stems from one major nerve, our 10th cranial nerve, which is our vagus nerve. And this vagus nerve exits the brain via the brain stem, and then it bifurcates, it branches off into two main stems that follow along our neck, and it nets and it continues to branch through the rest of the body. And we'll have an image for you demonstrating this in a moment, but it's a tremendously far-reaching nerve, the vagus nerve. And if you can just picture a net that goes down from your brain stem along your neck, and then it literally infiltrates every organ and all the way down into your colon. It's a centerpiece of this gut-brain relationship, and it's sending information constantly from the gut and other organs and other viscera up into the brain and the central nervous system. And if the gut is healthy, which means that it's not inflamed, it's not congested, it's pH is right or neutral, then the information it's going to be sending to the brain is going to be of a happy or good quality, so to speak. Now, if it's inflamed and unhealthy, if you are constantly experiencing indigestion, if you just feel like you have a cement in your stomach or something like this, you're going to have a negative tone, if you will, traveling up into the brain. And this verbiage, this idea of tone, is exactly the clinical language we use when we talk about the vagus nerve. We want to have a good vagus nerve tone or a good vagus tone. If the tone is incorrect, to say stressed, you're going to be in a sympathetic or fight or flight response. And if it's of a soft tone or of a healthy tone, you're going to be in your parasympathetic or your rest and digest response. And so as you can see right away, hopefully, that what we eat is going to, in many, many ways, prime the body to be in its conscious state. A stress state where we're kind of agitated and ready to fight or flight, as well as freeze. Or we're going to be in a calm state, a nurturing state, a social state, where we're ready to rest and digest and recuperate. This gut-brain axis it can't be overstated how important it is. It's literally the main highway for the gut and the brain. And in fact, it's worth noting that within the gut is housed a second nervous system. So we've already discussed very briefly the central nervous system, which we often think of as the main nervous system of the body. But the second nervous system is the enteric nervous system. And that is housed in the gut, which means that it's housed in our large intestine and small intestine. And it's majorly communicating with the central nervous system as well. Sometimes the gut is referred to as the second brain of the body. And in many respects, I think that's a very, very fair label to put onto it. Because as you can see in the next slide, please, the state of the gut is going to really determine the color of the information that's coming up to the brain. And so on this left side of this image, as you'll see, a healthy gut-brain axis means that volatile compounds, what that means is these are things that we need to eliminate. We need to exhale them. They're appropriately exhaled through the breath. They've been digested, and some of that metabolite will go into our respiratory system. We're able to eliminate them. That in turn is going to promote normal cognitive factors, meaning that we just think clearly, so to speak. Our balanced gut microbiome, which we'll get into more as we move forward through this presentation. A normal immune regulation, because it's important to note that the majority of our immune system actually is housed in the guts. This may be something you've heard talked about before or spoken about before. While every cell in our body has an immune system component, the majority of the immune system sits in the guts, and we'll explain that a little bit more as we go on. And the gut barrier is intact. This gut barrier, believe it or not, what that refers to is your intestinal lining, the border between your intestines and then the rest of your body. And believe it or not, that the thickness of that intestinal lining is one cell, literally one cell. So it's quite vulnerable to insults or becoming corrupted. For a point of reference, the very top layer of our epidermis of our skin is about 5 to 10 cells thick, depending on the phenotype, on our individual cells. But 5 to 10 cells on the very top surface of our skin. I mean, that's not that thick. And then you can think just one cell in the gut lining. So unfortunately, I'm not sure if that's the right way to put it, but that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. So on the other side of the image now, an altered gut-brain axis, this means that the gut is not healthy. So we have altered levels of volatile compounds, which means that they're not expelled appropriately or expedited on time, which means that we're going to have more inflammatory things kept in the body, which in turn is going to cause inflammation. Okay, we have an altered cognitive function. That might include brain fog, headaches, slow recall. Vision will be actually not as sharp, etc. Our nervous system and our motor skills will be affected. The gut microbiome is dysfunctional because it's unbalanced. There's immune dysregulation, which again, we'll get into this more, but that means that the immune response is going to be erratic and over the top. It's going to be overcorrecting. It's not necessarily an autoimmune response issue, but it's dysregulated response. It's an unorganized response. That means you're going to have chronic inflammation in the gut, and that means the gut barrier is going to be disrupted. So that gut lining that's just one cell thick will become corrupted to, say, broken, which means things can leak in and out of the gut. Leaky gut is an absolutely true phenomenon. Most of us presenting as healthy or unhealthy, most of us have leaky guts. This used to be kind of a marginal idea in the functional nutrition world, in the medical world at large, but it's hard science, it's hard facts now. We know this absolutely. The next slide, please. So this relationship with the gut and the brain, it's bidirectional. This means the information goes both ways from each organ. Each organ informs the other. But what's important here is that the gut sends twice the amount of information from it up to the brain that the brain sends to it. So this is a point that I can't overstate. There's twice the amount of information coming from your GI tract up into your central nervous system and into your brain than there is from the central nervous system and the brain sending to the gut. It's remarkable. And this is why we talk about the gut as a second brain. The enteric nervous system as being, just a primary system of information and nervous system regulation. Now, most of that information that the gut is sending originates from the microbiome. Now, the microbiome is the ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microorganisms that live in the gut. Trillions upon trillions of microorganisms live on the body and in the body, and several 100 billion live within the gut, if not more than that. And the reason those microorganisms produce so much information is that it's the microbiota, which are the individual bacteria that make up the microbiome. Those microbiota are what metabolize the food. So you eat something, it comes down the GI tract, the gastrointestinal tract, into the stomach. The stomach does its thing. It goes through the small intestine into the large intestine, and it's broken down further. And the microbiota break down the food, they metabolize the food, and in response convert certain nutrients into certain molecules, into chemicals, into proteins, etc. And what's happening there, whether it's going well or not, whether you have a preponderance of a certain macronutrient or a deficit of a certain micronutrient, that information is being sent up into the central nervous system in the brain. And some of the information is going to elicit a response in the rest of the body to do its job, meaning that your endocrine system, your hormone system, is going to be, in many respects, governed via the information that the gut is sending to the body. And we'll discuss this more as we go on here, but your hormonal response is what's governing so much of our behavior in the central nervous system. If we're in a sympathetic state, if we're in the parasympathetic state, if we're stressed out or if we're rested, those hormones are being produced via certain glands in the body, but those glands are being told to do or produce a certain amount of hormone because of the information coming from the gut. Very, very important thing to understand. Next slide, please. So this is a little illustration of our microbiome, gut microbiota, who is there. There's literally dozens upon dozens of strands that we want in the body, in the GI tract in particular. There's, you know, hundreds upon billions, amounting trillions of microbiota in the body. They can do many, many different things for us. They can work for us. They can help us out, meaning that they can promote our health and well-being. That means that they're going to support an immune system, support a cognitive functioning, supports repair and recovery through all systems of the body, but particularly, you know, things like the skin and the hair and the nails. What are they doing? They're doing all of the above. But what happens in the microbiome is that a certain population, once it becomes stronger than other populations, it kind of takes over. And so there's in many respects, there's the phenomenon of natural selection happening in the GI tract all of the time, meaning that one population of bacteria is trying to cultivate or carve out room for itself versus another population. And unfortunately, once a bad population of bacteria takes root, it spreads quickly, and that can cause a tremendous amount of health trouble for us. Because the bacteria reproduce so quickly, it can become quite difficult to eradicate them. But don't let me sound negative there. It's very easy to actually clean house, so to speak, as long as you follow a correct protocol, and we'll discuss that as well. But if we could have the next slide, please.
And also to that point, the good bacteria can also regrow really quickly, you know, and take over. So that's another good thing.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah, it doesn't matter the species. Any species will thrive as long as the condition is correct for it in the GI tract. And what you eat, this is an adage, what you eat is what you are. If you eat healthy things, you're going to have a healthy gut. If you eat unhealthy things, you're going to have an unhealthy gut. But yeah, we're very plastic, not only you know, not only in the brain, but we're plastic throughout the whole body. Neurologically, we're plastic, GI speaking, we're plastic, etc. So the biggest takeaway with this whole passage is just that a healthy gut will support a healthy central nervous system. It will support an endocrine system that's healthy, and all other bodily systems, therefore, will be healthy. Endocrine system, again, is our hormone system. And hormones are really the messaging signaling system in the body that's the body operates via the messages that it gets through the hormones. Next slide, please. So what is a healthy gut? A healthy gut is a diverse microbiome. It's a place that is not chronically inflamed. It has sealed junctures, and it is a dynamic and appropriate pH. So note A here, a diverse microbiome. Again, there's many, many, many sorts of species of bacteria we can have in the gut. We want a diverse population of bacteria in the gut because we don't want any one particular species to take over. No chronic inflammation. This means that the gut, it has an appropriate and dynamic pH. So B, C, and D here, all these notes are quite closely related. No chronic inflammation means that there won't be an insult or corruption to the intestinal lining, which means the junctures will stay sealed, which means you will be very unlikely to have leaky gut. And that's only going to happen if you have a dynamic and appropriate pH. And what that means is that when we eat food, we need to produce gastric juices or stomach acids to break down what needs to be broken down. So that means our pH in the gut is going to become very acidic. But we only want it to be acute, meaning that we only want it to be a temporary acidity. And then once the acids do what they need to do, we want them to kind of seep back into our tissues or be kind of packaged up and ready for elimination. And the rest of our GI tract goes back to a more neutral pH, something in the neighborhood of like 7.4, maybe even alkaline, so like in the 8s. That's only going to happen if we have a diverse microbiome, if we don't have chronic inflammation, and if the junctures are sealed. Chronic inflammation means that we're always acidic in the gut, for the most part, 9 times out of 10. You can be very base. You can have a pH that's greater than 7.4. And if you hang out too base, if you hang out in the 8s and 9s, you can run into some health problems. But this healthy gut that is reflective of these 4 main points is going in turn to have us house a very calm and dynamic CNS. A CNS that's not always in sympathetic mode, not always in fight or flight mode, nor is it always in the parasympathetic mode, rest or digest. It's responding to stimuli adequately, to say appropriately. Next slide, please. A healthy gut, it makes for feelings of dynamic and appropriate energy. It's going to make for a robust and calm immune response and steady and resilient mood. So A and C here are quite, well, actually all of these are quite intimately related here. But, you know, we want to have appropriate energy during the course of the day. We want to be energetic when we need the energy to do our tasks, and we want to be tired and sleepy when it's time to sleep. And our gut is going to largely play into that, okay? Because those feelings of appropriate energy are hormone driven. And when we're eating foods that spike our insulin, which in turn spikes our cortisol and spikes our adrenaline, these are going to make us feel very energetic, but in not such a calm and steady way. And we're simply going to be agitated. And then we're going to likely have a big crash. And then we're going to be, you know, 3 o'clock looking for a room to take a nap in or something like this. So if we eat foods that don't spike our glucose, or rather, if we don't eat foods that are overloaded with glucose and spike our insulin, we're going to be better off. And we'll get into that insulin response in a moment here. But a healthy gut will make for a robust and calm immune response because the immune system being housed in the gut doesn't need to be working overtime if the gut is healthy. If the gut is unhealthy and chronically inflamed, the immune system is always trying to kind of put out the fire that's in the guts already. And it's just an overtaxed system then. It's going to make for a steady and resilient mood as well, because, you know, when things are working well, then you're going to have this equanimity, this sense of calmness and appropriate response in every case. Next slide, please. So what is an unhealthy gut? It's just pretty much the 180, the flip side of a healthy gut. It's an impoverished microbiome, it's inflamed and it's leaky, and it has a sluggish pH. And 2 predominant feelings are going to be presenting themselves when you have at least the earliest stages of an unhealthy gut. And this is indigestion, fatigue, and irritability. So firstly, let's just discuss briefly here why we might have an impoverished microbiome. And what I mean by impoverished microbiome is, you know, not a very diverse ecosystem there, or microbiome there. Just a few strands, and those strands are bacteria that are fed off sugars or other simple foods, other simple carbohydrates, and they kind of have taken over the house. Which in turn is going to make for chronic inflammation, and which in turn is going to make for a leaky gut, because that gastric juice, that acid production never really has had a chance to resolve itself, as we would say. And that in turn is going to cause indigestion, and then indigestion is going to indicate to the body up the vagus nerve that you know, things are not well here. And so you're going to feel fatigued and you're going to be irritable likely, because really you're not metabolizing your food for the energy that you need it for. And then, as you can see, that's kind of like the first few dominoes falling in a huge train. And then the rest of your day could be, really unfortunately hijacked by this. Your fatigue and irritability might cause you to act in ways that are inappropriate or maybe not ideal in a business meeting or some sort of interaction. And that might cause you to kind of ruminate and regret that. And then, it can just go on from there. A negative feedback loop can very easily be perpetuated simply because you're eating things that aren't supporting a healthy gut. And we're going to talk about how you can support a healthy gut in a few minutes here. But the next slide, please. An unhealthy gut disrupts our circadian rhythm and endocrine function. It increases the production of stress hormones, and it affects the CNS in a negative way. So our circadian rhythm, maybe you're familiar with this fancy sounding term, maybe not. That's our sleep and wake cycle, circadian rhythm. It's a 24-hour cycle, and our body and every cell, generally speaking, runs on it. Meaning that we're meant to wake up when it gets light out, and we're meant to be active throughout the day with the sunlight. And then we're meant to kind of get a little bit tired and we'll feel ourselves winding down as it gets dusk. And then when it's dark out, we're ready for bed. An unhealthy gut will disrupt that because it's going to produce an immuno response that was going to, in turn, interrupt the endocrine function of the body. Endocrine, again, is the hormone system of the body. Your body will not be able to produce its sort of sleep hormones, in particular melatonin, if you're constantly in a state of immuno response, because your body feels like it needs to fight this. It's a sympathetic response, and in order to fight this sort of chronic inflammation or even infection in the gut, which is very possible, it's going to be producing, adrenaline and cortisol and other things to keep the body fighting this. And you simply won't enter the deepest stages of sleep. You might find it difficult to fall asleep, and then you won't enter deep sleep, which is, as we know, when you repair the deepest systems of the body, or when you repair the systems in the body in the deepest way.
Brain.
Yes, yeah. Or the brain, as Alexia said, as we know, for the brain to clean house, it needs to be in a deep state of sleep. You may or may not know, we have 4 stages of sleep. We have shallow sleep, medium sleep, deep sleep, and REM. REM will attend any of those stages. So you can be deep, and each of those stages you cycle through every 90 minutes about. Give or take a few minutes here. You'll go to sleep and you go into shallow sleep, and then you might experience some REM, and then you go into medium sleep, and then you go into deep. But the brain will only clean itself up, which means the governor of the central nervous system is going to only clean itself up when you're in deepest sleep. Okay. There's, perhaps you've heard of the lymphatic system in the body. This is kind of the infrastructure, the sewage system of the body that helps eliminate all of our toxins. The brain has its own unique elimination system called the glymphatic system. And the glymphatic system, it's just like the lymphatic system, it works with valves, if you will. And that only happens at its optimal effect when we're deeply in the deepest stages of rest, of sleep. So all the more reason to eat appropriately to support a healthy gut. An unhealthy gut increases the production of stress hormones and affects the CNS. Those main stress hormones are going to be cortisol and adrenaline, but there's many other that it will attend. Next slide, please. So that being said, we don't want a healthy gut. We don't want an unhealthy gut. Hopefully that's clear. So how can we support a healthy gut? Or how can we even get a healthy gut if we think our gut is not so healthy right now? And as Alexia said, we can do it. We can do it quite easily as long as we're consistent. And as long as we're consistent, really. But we can do it by eating whole natural foods. mostly plants. Like, we can't overstate that enough. You want to eat whole natural plants. You know, those plants ideally are going to be in season. Here we are in the height of summer here in the Midwest. We have a lot of options to eat, whether it's, you know, dark leafy greens or cruciferous vegetables or, you know, you name it. We kind of have our pick now. We're very lucky. But eating whole natural foods has a benefit because our body understands what they are. And we'll get into that more in a moment. We want to avoid processed foods as much as possible. Processed foods are pretty much anything that you don't prepare yourself. They're anything that you buy that are packaged. It's fast food. It's unfortunately, it's what most of us eat. And I understand it has so much to do from a convenience standpoint, why we eat these things. But as we'll explain in a few minutes here, processed foods are a serious inflammatory agents in the body. So how can we avoid processed foods? We need to read the labels, because there are some things packaged in the grocery store that in fact are just fine to eat. And the label will tell you. But there'll be a few things we want to encourage you to be on the lookout for when you look at a label. One is that please make sure that there's no added sugar. Added sugar is just, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. Sugar is just so inflammatory. And second, the label should be very, very small.
And by reading the label, it's not the nutrition facts, you know, that like it has these many grams of protein or whatever, but it's the ingredients. You want to make sure that you read the ingredients of the label.
Yeah, we can't encourage you enough to read any text that's on the label. If it's written there, there's you know, certain institutional or governments guidelines where they must follow. So this information they need to disclose. And secondly, it should be, like Alexia said, the ingredients, they should be things you recognize. If there's things in the ingredients that you have no idea what they are and they sound like a chemical, they probably are a chemical and you do not want it. You do not want it. And then D here, as you can see, to support a healthy gut, this is very important as well. Please don't snack and no sodas. Snacking doesn't give the gut time to rest. We'll get into that more in a few minutes here. And sodas are just inflammatory bombs. They're just caloric, sugar, pH rising, or pH dropping acidic bombs. Even, unfortunately, carbonated water. We don't want to drink that excessively. A little bit, one, you know, San Pellegrino, let's say, or some sort of like just carbonated water. This is okay, but maybe one a day, maybe 8 ounces a day. And the reason on that is that it simply raises our, or rather, it makes us acidic, so our pH goes into a lower tone. And secondly, is that it can leach minerals from the bones, and we don't want that. Next slide, please. So to talk about processed foods a little bit more, most packaged and prepared foods are processed. The process of processing foods means that they're denatured and inflammatory. What we mean by denatured is the natural biological signature that our GI tract and our digestive system can recognize that food by is no longer authentic. And it doesn't, literally, our body doesn't understand what it is we put in our body. And it doesn't know what to do with it. And typically, it takes a long time for it to figure out what to do with it, digestively speaking, meaning that instead of a 20-minute digestion, it might be hours upon hours of a digestion time. And then meanwhile, the digestion is a packaging up process, and then it's sent off to be eliminated. And that entire process there is inflammatory. Healthy digestion is inflammatory, but it's very transient. It's very momentary, if you will. It's an acute inflammation in the gut, and then it ends within 20 or 30 minutes in a perfect world. Processed food does not make for that process to happen. The denatured aspect of processed foods is something we're understanding much more. There's some very, very interesting research, particularly coming out of the UK, about this sort of imposture status of processed foods. And it's like getting a letter in the mail that you need to read because it has some very important information for you. But the penmanship of the handwriting, you can't read it. And so you have no idea what you're supposed to know, so to speak. And so we don't want to eat denatured things. Next slide, please. So how do whole natural foods support our gut health and therefore the brain health? So whole natural foods, they down-regulate inflammation, and they support a stable immune system in CNS. So our inflammation, as we just mentioned there, it should always be a transient response through digestion. And that means that the inflammatory response to digestion rises and then it resolves itself. And then if we have other little inflammatory sites in the body, if we have a little muscle tweak in the shoulder, let's say, or in the neck, or anywhere in the body for that matter, we need a stable immune system to be able to allocate energy, if you will, to go and address that insult or that little tweak in the body and resolve the inflammation that's there. Only eating whole natural foods will do that. Because if we fill our gut with processed foods, with foods that produce inflammation, that's the primary situation that the body's going to deal with. When we eat food, all hands on deck, so to speak, go to the gut to deal with it. And this little tweak in the shoulder or neck, let's say, that was bothering us, now there's not the energy, if you will, to address it. And it's only going to be addressed efficiently, to say optimally, once we have digested the food in our gut. And if it's processed food, it's going to take a long time to digest. And so this just lingers. And then that inflammation in this neck or shoulder, wherever the injury may be, hypothetically, is going to become inflamed more and become a deeper problem. So in short, inflammation won't get resolved unless we're eating whole natural foods. The stable CNS as well, particularly with the mood that we experience. We're happy when we should be happy, so to speak, and we're sad when we should be sad. We won't be stuck in these sort of one-dimensional mindsets. Next slide, please. The reason whole natural food is so good for us and provides adequate nutrients for energy is that it provides the crucial, critical macro and micronutrients. Macronutrients are divided into our carbohydrates, our proteins, and our fats. Amongst those macronutrients, we don't need carbohydrates. We literally could survive and live healthily with just protein and fats. Carbohydrates are a great fuel for the body. They provide glucose, which is kind of the preferred fuel for the body, only because it's very quickly metabolized. But fats is actually a cleaner system of energy for the body, and we can't do without fats. Micronutrients, these are other things, vitamins and minerals that we need. Different polyphenols and different phytonutrients. These are things that come from plants in particular. In the nutrition speak, there's something called nutraceutical, and that's just a designation for a macronutrient that provides, this incredibly potent, vital spectrum of upregulating cellular function. Micronutrients, particularly from plants, are going to be all classified as nutraceuticals. And the only way to get them, so that they're the most bioavailable, to say that they're the most recognized by the body, will be through plants or other animal products, but particularly through plants. Minerals we get through whole natural foods. Minerals are crucial for our signaling to the body. Our electrolytes. We need the CNS, the central nervous system, is often sending electrical signals to the body, right? Sometimes some chemical systems, or some chemical systems, signals, some biochemicals. But largely there's an electrical firing going on all the time. and it needs minerals for that firing to happen. Things like sodiums and different salts and potassium and magnesium and things. Enzymes are crucial, and they come via the fibers and other fruits and vegetables in particular. Enzymes will help expedite some of the digestive process in the food. They help break down the foods as well. You may have heard of digestive enzymes and things like these. We need them to produce some gastric juices. And whole natural foods are truly the only way to get pre, pro, and postbiotics. So, you know, probiotics, this is something that's all over the place in pop culture and for better or worse in the supermarkets and so forth. The best probiotics, so these are things that are going to promote the thriving, to say the lives of biotics, to say the bacteria in our microbiome. The best delivery of probiotics is whole natural food, far superior to a capsule. We also need prebiotics. So prebiotics are things, particularly like fiber, that are going to lay down the sort of soil that the probiotic will live in. And the best way to get fiber, of course, is to actually eat fiber. So this is coming from, you know, things like the skins of fruits, the skins of vegetables, etc. And postbiotics are some of the metabolites and simply digestive material that comes from the probiotic breaking down foods. So again, the best way to get them is to eat the whole natural foods. And again, by doing that, you're going to promote or elicit this very healthy hormonal response in the body, which in turn is going to help stabilize the CNS and you know, provide for just happy living. Next slide, please. So some examples of whole natural foods would be cruciferous vegetables, some fruits or any fruits, nuts and seeds, and including nut and seed butters, and then animal protein, including raw milk cheeses and butters and so forth. Cruciferous vegetables are things like cauliflower and broccoli. Fruits, you know, are self-explanatory. Avocados are fruits, believe it or not. Chalk that up to a win if you like avocado. Nuts and seeds of all sorts. Of course, all of us have to take into account we may be sensitive or have some intolerances or maybe be even allergic to some of these things. So it's important to be aware of that. And if you're not aware of that, you can you know, easily find out via various, you know, labs and so forth. But what's important on this slide is to emphasize that we want a pro-fat diet, meaning that we want good, healthy, natural fats in our regular eating day-to-day schedule. Things like, you know, dairy fats, butters, avocado, nuts and seeds, almond butters, peanut butters, all those things are great. If organic is possible for you, much, much better. But the reason these fats are so important is that they're going to help preserve cellular health in particular. Cellular health is dependent on the shape of each cell, amongst many other things. But on the shape of the cell has a membrane around it. That membrane is a bilipid membrane. That's fancy to say that it's contingent on fat, lipid being fats. And so the healthier the fats are that we are putting into our body, the more that it's going to promote and preserve bilipid layers in our cells. And again, we will minimize any inflammation in the body, and our hormonal response will be ideal. Next slide, please. So foods that feed the gut-brain axis. Fermented foods are going to be great. Okay. The reason is that a fermented food, fermentation actually produces you know, the environment for bacteria to thrive in. Sauerkraut or kimchi, raw dairy things, coconut yogurts, all of these are great things. You can eat them daily if you like. Polyphenol-rich foods. Polyphenol just means that there's an abundance of different micronutrients in them. Things like matcha, this is green tea. This is the whole leaf that's ground down. And then you just, mix it with the water, hot or cold, and then you ingest that whole tea leaf, and it's fantastically good for us. Olive oil, blueberries, dark chocolates, and omega-3 fatty acid foods. So omega-3, these are, short fatty chains that we want. You find them in walnuts and sardines and wild salmon. It's important to note on the fish here that we'll talk about more in a moment. You don't want to eat fish that are too large, simply because of the heavy metal propensity in aquatic life. Unfortunately, we polluted the oceans to such a state that heavy metals are just everywhere in the waters. And because of the ecosystem and the food chain, the bigger the fish is, like a swordfish or a tuna, they'll be ingesting smaller fish, which in turn have some heavy metals in them, mercury in particular. And you want to avoid that as much as possible. So the exposure to mercury via sardines or even wild salmon is much less compared to things like tuna. But anyhow, you can add any of these to your daily eating, and you'll be doing yourself a world of good for your mental health. Next slide, please. The benefits of no snacking. So this is something that can't be overstated as well. And that is that we don't want to be eating all day. We don't want to be grazing all day, because the gut is an organ that needs to rest itself. When the gut doesn't have time to rest itself, it's going to become inflamed. So all of the hallmarks that we mentioned about an unhealthy gut, those would be promoted or exacerbated or kind of set in if we don't give ourselves time to not be eating anything. So, there's a lot of talk today of things like intermittent fasting or time restricted eating or whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line is that you want to eat breakfast and then don't eat anything, please, until you have your next meal, whether that's lunch or dinner. Because again, you need to give your gut time to rest. If your gut's inflamed, if it has leaky junctures, the only way that can be resolved is if the gut is not busy trying to digest food. So that really can't be overstated. And when you arrest the gut, the endocrine system then is getting clear signaling. So your hormone trend is stable. A happy gut is a happy body, bottom line. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, food nourishes the brain because it determines the health of our gut. With a healthy gut, we have a healthy brain. Our gut is in constant communication with our brain via the gut-brain axis. And the gut-brain axis is something that we can really, really kind of we absolutely can take care of, just as long as we have the right lifestyle habits in place. Foremost, that we're eating whole natural foods. Secondly, that we're getting enough sleep. And then thirdly, that we're moving throughout the day. About the getting enough sleep, we mentioned this just briefly via, the appropriate micronutrients. But what's crucial to help kind of upregulate or promote what's called sleep pressure, or set the stage to sleep well, we want to be moving around every day as well. And ideally, you'll be moving around outside, or at least with exposure to some natural light, because that natural light is going to help regulate our circadian response. Very, very important to move around, whether that be simply as walking outside, or maybe inside, walking on a treadmill, or maybe even more vigorous exercise than that. Now, in addition to that, the movement's going to supply a benefit of helping digest the food, because we're going to reach or burn through our energy stores. And then we can also promote healthy sleep via minimizing our digital exposure, particularly the digital light, the blue light coming from our screens after 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., depending on what time you go to bed. But you want to minimize your screen time at least 2 hours before you're going to try to go to bed. And you may know a little bit about this, and we'll just talk briefly about this. We can go into it more if you like in the Q&A. But if you eat food and then try to go to bed, it's not going to happen very well because you won't enter the deepest stages of sleep. When we eat food, our body temperature, our core body temperature increases because all the blood rushes to the gut to help start digestion. And so our core temperature increases, and it contradicts what our body needs to go enter the deeper stages of sleep, which is the body needs to cool down, actually. So you don't want to eat food and go right to bed. And what most of us do is we eat food and then we watch Netflix or something like this, and then we try to go to bed. And so we have a full belly, and then we're watching a blue screen that in turn is upregulating our nervous system because the blue light is stimulating us and producing more cortisol and adrenaline in the body, which is going to prevent our ability to sleep well and deeply.
And, you know, to go back to the eating right before sleeping, one of the things that is good to keep in mind is try to eat when it's light out, because like Robbie was explaining earlier with the circadian rhythm, the gut plays a huge role into that. And so when we eat when it's light out, our gut is responds, you know, it sends a response to that, and we get better digestion and better sleep, you know, because of that.
Yeah, so true, so true. Yeah, if we can live with the cycle of the sun, of the dawn and dusk cycle, we'll be setting ourselves up for success with health and well-being in every way. Because just as important as food is to our brain, so is our light exposure, and that can't be overstated. So just to briefly wrap up this idea of promoting sleep via movement and minimizing screen time. If you can, just try to turn off the screens 2 hours before bed, or you can wear maybe blue blockers or something like this, but just be conscious of it because it can affect you in a negative way. But the gut-brain axis is key to our mental health and our well-being, and you can nourish the gut-brain axis by eating whole natural foods and mostly plants, and not eating all the time, no snacking, and you'll be doing yourself a world of good. Next slide, please. By promoting a healthy gut with whole natural foods, we set the stage for hormone balance, restorative sleep, and a stable CNS. And next slide. And that's it.
Hey, thank you guys so much. That was super informative. I know I learned a ton and I have questions of my own, but who cares about me? Well, let's get the questions from our participants. We do appreciate you guys coming. We are going to do questions now. I know the chat feature may not be working, so if you do have questions, please put it in the Q&A chat feature as opposed to just strictly the chat. We'll get your questions there. And we already have one. It says, are there tests to determine gut health to show someone, instead of nagging about their diet, that they need to eat better? Also, does gut health also affect the effectiveness of required medications?
Yes to both questions. Thank you very much for the question. There are a great variety of different labs that you can do via blood and other samples that are readily available. You can actually order some online if you're so inclined, or you can see your general practitioner, your doctor. But the accuracy of these tests are improving incredibly fast. It's very exciting. So I encourage anyone who thinks that they might need to, have a test to see what the state of their gut is to absolutely do that. And I would encourage them to be as thorough as possible. So that would mean a blood test as well as a fecal test. And in regards to creating a healthier environment or sort of bioavailability of any sort of pharmaceutical or medicine, that absolutely is the case. Food won't necessarily contraindicate with most drugs. There are some cases where they will, so you'd want to ask your prescriber that. That being said, the healthier the gut is, the faster things are going to be absorbed into the body. So if you're trying to absorb a specific thing, you And if the gut's healthy, you will in fact absorb it, to a significant degree. Meaning if there's 10 parts to be absorbed, you'll absorb close to 10 parts. If you have an unhealthy gut and you try to take something to help yourself, you're going to absorb very little of it, simply because the gut is not in a state to do its job.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Is organic sugar-free yogurt not considered healthy for the gut versus coconut yogurt?
No, that's fine. I think that's healthy. On yogurt, whether it's dairy, well, particularly with dairies, I would encourage, I love that it's sugar-free. Thank you so much. Please continue to do that. But what's also very important is that it's full fat. You don't want anything non-fat, and you don't want anything low fat, because that's processed. And again, fats are actually, in my humble opinion, fat is the most critical macronutrient for us. It comes way before protein and light years before carbohydrates. So I would encourage you to have a sugar-free yogurt that's full fats. And that yogurt isn't necessarily better or worse than coconut yogurt. Coconut yogurt is just going to be of a different molecular makeup.
Right, unless you have a sensitivity to, dairy or something like that. But if not, yeah, whole milk is great. And like Robbie was saying, anything really that says low fat in the label, it's like it's been changed and processed and it's not good. Like when you read that, it's a no.
Yeah.
Yes. I have no idea. That's wild. That is wild. Thank you for that question. Okay, let's see. Another question says, I thought the stool test ordered by a primary care doctor doesn't compare to a functional stool test. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's fair. So there's different parameters for the tests. And if you go to a functional doctor, a functional health practitioner, they're probably going to order up a lab that is more comprehensive than just a conventional doctor, because a functionally trained doctor will be interested in certain biomarkers or certain things that a conventional lab won't provide. So yeah, I would encourage anyone who's going to get any sort of test done to get as comprehensive as possible, because you want to look under the hood, so to speak, as thoroughly as possible. But I do want to just mention one caveat on stool tests. They're not the end-all be-all view into your colon microbiome, because typically what has been eliminated out of the body would just be representative of the last 6 inches or so of the colon. And there's many more feet of microbiome that may not be representative down there. So it's something just to keep in mind. And if someone's going to work with a functional doctor or anyone who's integrative or with this sort of a approach to things, they'll explain it in much greater detail. But it's very helpful nonetheless to get any sort of a stool test done, because if you're not feeling well, likely one of the culprits, so to speak, will show up.
Thank you. Any more questions from our participants? I do have a question for you. There was this one comment that you made about more information going from your gut to your brain versus your brain to your gut. And that really surprised me, just because thinking about like cravings, like what? I feel like those cravings are so powerful. And how do you combat that? And especially when you're sitting at home and watching Netflix, just how do you do that? What are some strategies that we can use to kind of make sure that those cravings are more limited than normal?
Yeah, those cravings we all have them, absolutely. And they're indicative of the most of the greatest population of bacteria in your guts, at least one of them. And they're typically the bacteria that's going to want sugars or glucose or carbohydrates. And so what that means is that we need to remodel the microbiome, meaning that we need to eat things and live in a way that's going to, if this sugar-loving bacteria is this high and this, let's say, spinach-loving bacteria is this high, we need to tip the scale, we need to adjust it this way. And so in order to do that, you'd want to eat, these whole natural foods we mentioned. And in time, in the matter of just days, that population change will happen and a remodel will be in process there. That being said, it's easier said than done. And so there's some willpower that's needed. And the executive function will, in fact, be the executive, but you just need to hold strong there. Because it's very important to keep in mind that when we have a very strong craving, it's not indicative, or it's not because we are in any threat of starvation. When we're hungry, it's not because we're quote unquote undernourished, or I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't have said undernourished, because in many cases we are undernourished, where we don't have the correct macro and micronutrients that we need. That being said, we're hungry, but we're not in any danger. So we can simply not eat. And that by not eating, we let our gut rest, and the bacteria that is causing the hunger cravings, the hunger pains, if you will, even will, because they're not fed with what they need, and typically it's going to be glucose, they'll literally die off. And then as they die off, the healthier populations can spring up. And that competition, that natural selection, now it goes in the healthy, the tide turns to the healthy way. So in order to promote that or facilitate that, a couple of things. First is that you have to really commit to it. So have a mindset, okay, I want to improve my gut health, or whatever sort of language you want to use. And then secondly, that mindset, it's going to hopefully really make a firm commitment, and you execute that commitment via healthier choices. So when you do have this mad craving, when you're in episode 6 of whatever your show is, instead of reaching for the popcorn, maybe maybe reach for a spoonful of almond butter, or an avocado slice or something. That being said, I will say what would be the best thing actually would be to not have anything, but easier said than done. Baby steps to that. But just remember, any craving is indicative of it's like the idea of like a squeaky wheel gets the oil. Whatever is the loudest thing in your gut and you feed it, then it's going to be loud again. And so if you can again remodel things, you'll be pleasantly surprised how quickly it can happen, in fact, and then how quiet it will be.
And sometimes it just takes, not having certain things in your house and start replacing them for others that are healthier choices that you like, so that when you have a craving, you just grab something that it's going to be, good for you, rather than just eating because you feel like you're hungry, but it's just because you're watching something and you need to have something with it,
Yeah, so I guess on that too, right? If you are somebody who is challenged with this whole concept, and it's really hard to just get started, what type of tips do you recommend to slowly integrate this into your daily habits? Because I mean, it could be hard going from 0 to 100 real quick, right? So like, what type of tips do you have to make this a slow and smooth process for people?
Well, I would say I will give a couple of things, and maybe Robbie, you can give a couple others, but exactly what you're saying, it has to be as slow. Sometimes the slower and steadier, the better, because that's what's going to last longer. But start with the things that little bits at a time. Like, for example, I will not snack between breakfast and lunch. That's going to be the first step. Mm-hmm. And then you're comfortable with that. Okay, I'm not going to snack between lunch and dinner, or, pick something that you can actually do, because that will help you feel more empowered and better that you actually did it. And then you can add another step, not like, okay, I'm not going to stop snacking. I'm going to change my whole eating schedule, and I'm going to change the whole entire, everything that I have at my house to eat, because that will be too much, too quick, too overwhelming, and that will be failure. So
Right.
one thing at a time.
Right. And I'm sure that kind of gives you a sense of accomplishment too, right? If you are meeting these small goals continuously, then, you know, that could also improve your mental well-being as well, because you're achieving something that you set your mind to. So I could see how it would be very challenging to do it all at one time. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Doing, you know, when you are able to accomplish something that's hard, that also feeds
Mhm.
that loop that I want to do it again. I want to keep doing something that's going to be hard because it's, you did it yourself, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. We do have another question from a participant. It says, is using nut flours a better way to make foods than regular white flour?
To that, I would say yes. So flours, generally speaking, flours, they metabolize very quickly. And this is why they can be problematic, because they're going to spike our insulin in our body, which in turn will spike our cortisol and our major stress hormone. But white flour, you know, made from wheat, that can have all these other toxicities in it. There, you know, there can be pesticides and herbicides in the wheat. Then it's ground down to the flour, and then you ingest that. Nuts typically won't be as exposed to the toxins. That's not necessarily the case. So they can be loaded with toxins also. But an advantage with the nut flour is that they won't be metabolized as fast. Yeah, I would say like an almond flour or any other flour would be a smart choice.
Thank you. One thing that I was thinking as you were talking, especially when you were talking about the snacking, you hear a lot that 6 small meals a day is better than 3 big meals a day. So I guess, like, you know, where does it come from then, that 6 meal idea versus, okay, eat your breakfast, don't snack, eat your lunch, don't snack, eat your dinner, you know?
Yeah, it's very interesting because we're in a paradigm shift in the nutrition world. Absolutely. In many worlds, we're in a paradigm shift, I would say. But you know, perhaps some of the attendees here will remember the food pyramid. And this was an artifact of 1950s culture, where the idea was, okay, you on the base of the pyramid, that's the most important stuff to eat, and then you want to eat less as you go up the pyramid. The base of that pyramid were carbohydrates, things like pasta and cereals and breads, and then you went up to, you know, grains, or grains are there as well, but then you went up to animal proteins and stuff, and then at the very top are fats. And now it's more or less flipped over. Now, with that food pyramid, the idea was to eat 6 meals a day, because we thought we needed to constantly be giving the body caloric sources of calories, so that it could run its system as well. But we've turned that upside down as well, because we understand that the body, everything, so metabolism is just this process of conversion. And this conversion process needs time to take effect. And it's going to happen, it's going to take its most effect when other conversions aren't always happening. So it's a very complicated way that I just said it. I'm sorry, but what I mean to say is that we're going to produce more energy if we eat and then don't eat quite a while, and then eat again, because we will tap into energy stores. When we were eating 6 meals a day, and this is the advice we're being given, we were never tapping into the energy stores. Our energy stores are adipose tissue, fat tissue. And when you're constantly eating, your body's just going to use the energy that's already in the bloodstream, which is glucose, generally speaking. And so you're eating 6 meals a day, and you never tap into your adipose tissue, your fat stores, right? Now you're eating 6 meals a day. You don't use all that energy, all that calorie that you've taken in. So that excess energy gets stored as fat, and it just continues to layer on. And that's why, you know, the population is where it's at now with you know, with the most, you know, with the BMI, the body metric index, and the obese levels that we're at now. It's much healthier in every single body system response to eat less frequently. That doesn't mean eat less, but you don't want to eat all day, every day. You want to eat, stop, and maybe then your day's over. Yeah, so that's all to say the 6 days of 6 meals a day is just an artifact from, it's like dinosaur speak, and is the way I put it. And I don't mean to insult anyone or anything like this, but the literature that proves this consistently, both in mammalian models of rats and rodents, but also human being models of both sexes, of a diverse age range groups, on this idea is huge. Is huge.
Man, I'm outdated. That'll be my small goal I try to achieve this week. Dang. Okay, and we have a couple more questions in our Q&A box. Someone asked, I have heard that Roundup is being used on oats for easier harvest. Is that true?
Yes. As far as I know, it's true. So Roundup is a weed killer. Its main chemical is glyphosate. Glyphosate is one molecule away from a molecule that we need in our body all the time, and it can hijack our body, so to speak, in some ways. Glyphosate can. So you want to avoid things that have been exposed to glyphosate or Roundup. Roundup is, for all intents and purposes, glyphosate. Roundup is used on oats. It's used in most big agricultural farming. So this is why organic is such a very helpful thing, even critical thing to use. That being said, we need to be honest with ourselves here and understand that the toxic load that we're exposed to every day includes chemicals and chemicals of all kinds, via the air, via surfaces, but it's in our food as well, because the glyphosate is in our water table. So what I mean by that is that our water table is at various depths in the soil, in the ground, in the earth, and we've used so much glyphosate in the past generation that it seeps down to the water table. So it's almost unavoidable. That being said, there's going to be less glyphosate in an organic product than in a conventionally farmed product. And I don't mean to be alarmist here. And there are things that you can do by eating a whole natural diet to minimize your toxic load and to expedite the detoxification of the tissues of our body. Because what happens is you eat something that has been exposed to Roundup or growing with Roundup, and then that toxin, it literally becomes embedded in the tissues of our body, in different organ linings, in different cells, in different muscles, et cetera, et cetera. And then once it breaks free from the lining and it starts to go through the bloodstream and the lymph, it will wreak havoc, because it's going to cause an inflammatory response in the body. And then we can experience different health problems. We'll experience different moods and different mental states, et cetera. So it's just a great question, because you want to be aware that Roundup is a thing, glyphosate is a thing, and you want to do things to minimize exposure to it. So things like oatmeal, things like oat milk, we highly recommend you don't partake.
Oh my goodness. Oat milk is my favorite. That's so sad. That's so sad. Okay, last question that we see here says, if I have high cholesterol, how do I balance that with whole fat foods?
So cholesterol, this is a very knotted issue, and I'm not an expert on cholesterol, so please don't let me misrepresent myself. I'm not an expert. I'm not a medical doctor, so a functional nutritionist. That being said, I can assure you that fatty foods that are natural and whole, good healthy fats, will not increase your cholesterol in a bad way. It will measurably change the count of what's generically called HDL and LDL, absolutely, but it won't have a negative effect. And if you're interested, I would encourage you to simply Google positive effects of fat on LDL or something, because the low density lipids are what people are so concerned about. And in fact, you know, in the 50s, when cholesterol became this poster child, if you will, of cardiovascular health, that's when things like margarine and these processed fats were introduced, because they thought they would preserve our cholesterol health. It's the complete opposite, actually. And I say that just as sort of a teaser. If you like, you can Google that, and you'll find a tremendous amount of information on PubMed, on National Institute of Health, etc., on studies that show that that fat will actually promote a healthy cholesterol balance in the body.
Thank you so much. Do we have any more questions from our participants? Okay. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate you being here and sharing all your wisdom. You taught me so much, and I'm sure that our participants learned a lot from you as well. So we really appreciate you taking your time out to teach us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a couple closing remarks for our participants. If you did enjoy tonight's program, you can find more events and information of NAMI CCNS on our website. Our website is www.namiccns.org. Our next program is going to be held on September 18th from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., where Erin Teggy from Peer Services will provide further education on substance use as a self-coping mechanism. Should be a really good conversation. I'm very excited for this one. Also, please consider joining us at our NAMI walks. Our annual walk is being held at the Gallery Park in Glenview on Saturday, September 28th. Together, we will fuel mental health awareness. We're going to raise funds for NAMI's mission, and we're going to let people know that we are not alone, to come together in unison and walk for mental health. If you are interested and would like to register, please visit our website again. Again, that's www.namiccns.org. And lastly, once you log off, you are going to see a brief survey. Please, please, please take it. Not only does that give us more information on your comfort level with tonight's event, let us know how we did, but it also provides us with the information and data that we need so that we can continue providing our programs for free in the Cook County North Suburban area. So please take a couple minutes to fill that out. We would really appreciate it. And thank you so much for everybody for coming tonight. We really appreciate your presence. We appreciate seeing you here each and every month, and we look forward to seeing you again next month at our community webinar. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and we will see you very soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you very much. I will email you both tomorrow morning with everything. You are awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Go get some sleep.
Great. Good night.
Have a great night. Bye, guys.